Hello fellow humans and welcome to another episode of your replay, and we start off with the wary rival in the 2-5B, and today I want to talk a bit about how to carry with heavy tanks. Now if you want your replays to be featured as well, look in the description, link to my Discord server is there, and you put your links on Discord and you might be featured in one of the next episodes. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well if you're enjoying it. So, heavy tanks are, well, very important in Blitz. Now, the thing is, a lot of the times, a bad medium tank player has a worse impact than a bad heavy tank player, because a heavy tank has a lot more armor to compensate. The more armor you have, the more mistakes you can technically make without dying, because obviously the enemy might still be incompetent and not pin you. Whereas if you play something like a Leopard 1, pretty much every shot that goes at you will pin. So that's the advantage of heavy tanks, that they tend to be somewhat easier. However, you also have to watch out because normally your DPM's a lot lower than that of a medium, and your mobility is also a lot lower than that of a medium. Now the 2-5B, that's a very interesting case because you have an excellent gun on this tank. However, you don't only have that much armor, and you have the turret at the back, which means side scraping can work unless the enemy knows about the spot below the turret, because obviously the turret is slightly bent outwards, so if you shoot there into the hull, that little square, you can pin it even if it's side scraping. So there's that. Now, what you can do on this thing as well is avoid getting circled. That's a big problem with super heavies, like a E100 or a Mouse, or even an IS-7 or an IS-4. It's a big problem with those, that because your traverse speed's pretty horrible, you're going to get circled. With 2-5B, however, it turns pretty quickly, so you can avoid that, and that's a very important part. And look at that, 4,200 damage, just like that. So the gun definitely works, and obviously the ideal way to carry is pretty much always going to be the same thing applied differently, and that is shoot without getting shot. Because here's the thing, if you trade 1 for 1, you have a potential of 2,500 damage to be done with this vehicle, or less if the enemy has higher alpha damage, which means you always have to trade unevenly, right? You're going to do more damage than they can do to you. One way to do that is to simply have your teammates be the punching bag. Problem is, if you're a heavy tank, you're the punching bag. So it becomes a bit more tricky to do, because if you obviously camp in something like a Mouse, that is a very bad idea. Now in a 2-5B, that's why I start with this one, it's a bit more tricky, because the 2-5B can afford itself to be a bit more passive. And obviously, if you have teammates that rush in and die, they'll do the work for you. However, 6.5k damage is pretty damn good for a tank like this, and obviously nothing else happened there. So, with a 2-5B, shoot without getting shot. And with the 113, we're going to move up a bit more, and now we have a tank that has a bit higher alpha damage, that retains extremely high DPM, but that also has a bit better armor. We change it slightly. We're going to be slightly more forward here with this tank, because obviously you don't want to be the guy that camps in heavy, right? You want to be the one that gets stuck in, and that is why, for example, something like a 113 is excellent to go after mediums if you have help, right? Because this thing turns like a boat. Well, it was buffed, but it still turns like a boat, so that's not great. However, if you have backup, especially for medium tanks, that is a great thing to have, and you have 3,400 DPM, so a heavy tank like this, you want to use that DPM, right? You have high alpha damage, you have high DPM, which means you have the higher alpha damage than the medium tanks, and you have the higher DPM than all of the other heavy tanks. So you know what to use to your advantage, right? And ideally, you also don't want to go city on this map, or pretty much any map. Now, yes, it might seem counterintuitive to go out to the field with a vehicle like a 113, but there are about 3 tanks that actually work properly in a city, and also something like a Mouse or a VK100. And even then, you should definitely think about it. Now, a tank like this, again, lives off doing more damage than getting damaged. And there are 2 ways to do this. The first way is to get some teammates between you and the enemy team. That's the easiest way. Because if there are teammates between you and the enemy is more likely to shoot at your teammates. That's the not so cool version. The better version, that is more applicable to a heavy tank, is that you'll learn how to angle a tank and you're your own extra hit point pool, because every shot that bounces is essentially extra hit points for you. Which means, if you angle well, or if the enemy just simply can't aim, which also happens a lot, you don't need teammates to stand up for you and take the damage. Now, in a case like this, 2v2, 3,300 damage done. They're coming from the city, and in a situation like this, you focus the tank that is the bigger threat. In this case, the bigger threat is the T-57 Heavy. Why? 1,200 clip damage and more mobile. And the 57 Heavy is also easier to take out, because obviously with the mouse you need premium rounds, all that kind of vajazzle. With the 57 Heavy, APCR will be enough. So, you focus the tank that is the most dangerous while being the most easy to kill. That is the 57 Heavy. Now, I don't quite know what the chieftain's going for the mouse here. It would be better to focus fire one tank and then the other, because obviously the mouse is going to have a very bad time trying to help the 57 Heavy. However, the mouse is going to have a very bad time in general because he's being circled by a chieftain. And that's how you do 5,000 damage. So, in essence, if you have no armor, your team is your best armor. If you have armor, you've got to try to use it as much as you can. However, still make sure that you don't get yourself into uneven fights, right? Because if you fight in a 113 and you fight a platoon of T-57 Heavies, that is a very bad idea in any way, shape, or form. And now, we got a Dave, who's featured here quite a lot, because he's pretty good at the game, and likes the IS-4 a lot. And now we go to the next stage, the even heavier heavy tank, right? Because started with the 205B. That's high DPM, relatively low armor. We went to high DPM, medium armor. Now we go to low DPM, very good armor, basically. And again, your armor is your best armor in this case, because if you play a Leopard, if you play a 205B, you might not want to be the one that gets shot at. However, in the IS-4, you want to be the one that gets shot at. Ideally, in your sides, because the side armor in this tank is extremely strong. Which means you can side scrape all you want, you can bounce 5,000 damage, and wreck them. Now, obviously the same thing is also true for this vehicle, is if you put your teammates between you and the enemy, then, you know, you're less likely to be shot. And if you're effective that way, congratulations, you're now Super Unicum. That's the secret. Because, here's the thing. Reading your team and the enemy team is something that is very important. That is something very underrated in Blitz. I think that's not really talked about, because I always talk about tank stats, about tank armor. That's not really the most important thing of Blitz, because here's the thing. A tank that is absolutely insane, like a Smasher, in the hands of someone that is absolutely incompetent, will not perform. So reading your team is a very, very important thing to have. And in a situation like this, this is horrible. This is an absolutely horrible situation. You never want this to happen, right? When you have enemies left, right, everywhere. You never want this to happen. You always want to have the map control. Okay? And in a situation like this, what you have to do is you have to break out of one side. Because if you keep getting shot from two sides, you've already lost. You're just waiting to lose at this point. And it's very important to first of all take the map control and then also be able to read the enemy and your team. You look, okay, this guy is driving around like an idiot. I probably can't rely on him, which means he's not going to be very effective. However, I can make him very effective, right? By being extra hit points for me, for example, right? If I have a mouse on my team that has no camo, that's not in a clan, that's sitting in a corner somewhere, you'll pretty much know that that guy's not a good player, and you're like, okay, that's 3,000 free hit points that I can use to try and turn that around, right? Because if a teammate doesn't want to be effective, you make them effective by being a hit point mule for you. And in a situation like this, again, done pretty well here. You got to focus on one side, right? You want to break out of that hellhole. You never want to be flanked from two sides, which means, and ideally what you do here is you identify the weaker side of the enemy and you attack that side. And in this case, that was, weirdly enough, the medium one. And now it is a 3 versus 4 with 2 one-shots. So will this be a win? That seems unlikely now, does it? However, if you're a good enough player, you can still pull it off. Now, there are 4 of them. Which one of them is the biggest threat in this current moment? Well, that is TVP. Why? 1,200 damage clip. very dangerous and very fast, which means he can move anywhere at any time. So it's like the queen of chess. You want to be able to take that. If you can take that one out, if you can take out the fast, dangerous one, you can deal with the other ones a bit easier, right? Because an E75, yes, it has higher hit points. That's another thing. If you can take out the low hit point one, you have less guns to deal with. And there's the side scraping I'm talking about. So you can reverse side scrape this vehicle. Now the 268 is coming, so you want to get out of there. Gonna get shot here. Somehow, another thing that's obviously necessary to pull a 1v4 off is luck. No one is gonna win a 1v4 without at least a bit of luck. Unless they're all one-shots and you have an autoloader. So, again, I have no idea what that 268 version 4 is doing, because, I mean, he's the important one here. If he cocks it up, then it's going to be very hard for the ML and the E75 to make up for it, especially when you're against an extremely good player. Now, at this point, you have no teammates anymore. So you don't have anyone that you can be like, hey, I need your hit points. You gotta use your own. And in IS4, you can do that. You have extremely good armor. In that 268 version 4, again, he can't get his gun down far enough to shoot him here. And now he gets close, which doesn't make any sense, because an IS4 has extremely good turret armor. However, the upper plate is a bit weaker, so you can fire through the upper plate. But if you face hug it, you can't pin it. So, again, and then he kills himself with HE. So, like, that's the most important thing. If you know, after the first bounce, you're like, okay, he's having a bad time, right? After the second bounce, you're like, okay, maybe this guy's not that good. So, it's about reading the team. And this is obviously an incredibly good match. No doubt about that. The E75 now is firing standard ammunition at the front of an IS-4 and bouncing, but again, 5,000 damage blocked here. That's the more heavy your armor gets, the more extra hit points you have in that sense. So learn to angle your heavy tanks, people. And understand what type of heavy tank you're playing. Are you playing a 205B type that doesn't quite have the armor but has the DPM and the alpha damage? Are you playing an IS-4 type where you don't have the DPM but you have the armor? So learn your tanks, learn the angle, and most importantly, learn to read the enemy. Because if they're dumb, it's a lot easier for you to win. It's that simple. Thanks for watching.